This is Anton from Drive Stick Shift, and today we are going to be doing the valve cover gasket on a 1999 Mazda Protege 1.6 liter. Here we can see that it's been leaking, seeping out. You can see the grime accumulating. Furthermore, I even have a minute vacuum leak, which is bugging the heck out of me. First, going to grab tools, doing this all street side, and really don't need much to get her done. I have my basic tool set. Pop them in the hood. We're going to proceed to take off the coil packs. A few 10mm screws, 2 on either coil pack. Each coil pack does 2 spark plugs. Next, we're going to proceed to take off all the vacuum hoses. Here we have one going from the intake manifold. Make sure if you are taking any off that have any hard plastic pieces like that elbow, be careful with the hard plastic. It does get brittle with time and it can snap easily. Now I'm going to just proceed to pull out all the coil packs. I'm going to try to keep them together. This way it'll be easier for install. And just take them out and put them off to the side like such. Next, just take a look around the actual valve cover. Make sure there's nothing else that needs to be disconnected before we go pulling it off. Here you can see the cam sensor that needs to be disconnected. I just put a little pressure on the clip, pull it right off. Now with everything disconnected, we're going to proceed to break the bolts on the actual valve cover itself. This one has 9, 3 in the middle, 3 on either side, so 9 altogether. Pop them off, start undoing them. When you're taking all your bolts out, a good way to keep them organized, get a piece of cardboard, draw the general diagram of the part that you're taking out, like this valve cover, make some holes in there, and then put the bolts into the exact same slots, more or less. This is going to help make sure that if there are ones that are varying sizes, or if there's already some metal fatigue between the threads and the bolts, that they're going to stay in the exact same hole where the screw under bolt went originally. Once we take over the valve cover gasket, we want to take a quick inventory of the health of the top side of the engine. Everything looked good. I like the color. It's a nice amber. I didn't see any gunk. I didn't see anything accumulating. There wasn't any excessive wear on the cam lobes, so it looked good. If you have any of the old gasket that got stuck onto the actual mating surface, you want to go off and very gently clean it. If you can, use something that is soft. I had an old wore down razor and this dull knife, which I used. Cleaned it up a bit as much as I could. Once you cleaned off the big parts of the old gasket that got stuck onto the surface, now it's good to also go over it with a fine grit sandpaper and just make sure that we have it nice and smooth for when we're going to put on a new one. Being that this is the top side of the engine, the valve train, and I am working on the side of the street in Brooklyn, I like to also block it off so no dirt is going to be getting into the top side of the engine while I do the gasket inside. Alright, once we have that out, we're going to take the valve cover inside. We're going to take out the old gasket. It's probably going to be very dry and just caked in there. Do what you need to get it out. Try to stay careful. Of course, we don't want to scar any of the mating surface. Once we take it out of there, we can inspect it. I could see some areas that were cracked, definitely allowing some air to seep through. I also had oil in my spark plugs when I did that job about a month ago, so I could see there were many leak points. After the old gasket is out, you just also want to cleave the valve cover. Clean also the surfaces where the gasket is going to go as much as you can. Once we have that done, we're ready to put in a new gasket. Once the valve cover is nice and clean, you want to take and start to feed in a new valve cover gasket. Make sure you do not rush and you feed it in there very firmly. You don't want to be overstretching any parts or making sure that any parts accumulate or clump up. Once I take care and I feed in the gasket around the outside perimeter, I'm going to do the gasket for the spark plugs as you see here. Once we have the new gasket put in and seated nice and deep, we're ready to install it. Here we go back to the engine. We're going to take off that cover we had. Make sure we wipe down any kind of dirt or contaminants. Put a couple of dashes of RTV on either side of the valve cover where it goes up here. Fit isn't as well, and the RTV is going to help make sure that there's no leaks and that the gasket seats well. Now just proceed to reinstall everything that we uninstalled. Put the valve cover on. There is going to be a certain order that you want to put the bolts on, and you want to torque them down in sequence between 61 and 81 inch-pounds each. Take your time with this, as you do not want to snap any of the bolts. Next, we're going to reinstall the vacuum hoses, make sure they're nice and snug. Reconnect the cam sensor that we took out earlier. Lastly, reinstall the coil packs, and you're all set. Once you crank it up, make sure nothing's leaking anywhere around the sides. Okay, she starts, and even purrs like a kitten.